Lesson planning can be stressful because there's so much to think about and it takes a lot of time. Today, I'm going to share 5 hacks with you that will help make your lesson planning faster, more efficient, and better for your students. First things first, before you start, you need to level your students. You won't know what to teach until you know what your students know and don't know. Vygotsky talks about this in his zone of proximal development, which involves finding out what your students already know and then teaching them what they can learn based on your assistance. Krashen in the second language acquisition theory also talks about I+1, which is when you know where your students are at and teach just slightly above that level so that they can still understand and learn new knowledge. Leveling is especially important for ESL teachers as our students may range a lot in their English ability, whether it's between different classes or even within the same class. So they might not match exactly the curriculum that you were given, and you need to meet them where they already are at, and then take them by the hand and guide them to where they should go. Baby language learners cannot learn to run until you teach them how to take a step. If you teach your students way above their level, they're not going to understand you. But if you teach way below their level, they're going to be really bored and they'll feel like you're wasting their time. In order to level your students correctly, here are 2 things you can do. First, you can assess them in a lesson before by asking them questions related to the topic that you will teach later. Or you can give out a quiz or a survey to see what they already know and not. In fact, even during break time and recess, you can also just talk to your students so you have a gauge of their level in English. After you level your students, you're ready for the next step, which is start at the end. A lot of teachers spend their time Googling and doing Pinterest trying to get a lot of good ideas. This isn't a bad idea, but that's probably not where you should start. If you don't yet know your goal at the end and what you want to teach your students, you might go down the rabbit trail of beautiful activities and fun pictures and spend a lot of time on that and find activities that don't really match your lesson goal. The activities can be fun and fill up time, but are your students really learning? If you place your ladder against the wrong wall, your students are going to reach the wrong place. So you need to first know where you're going so you can take your students to the right destination. So let's start your lesson planning by identifying your learning objectives. Our next hack has to do with writing your learning objectives and more. Hack number 3, be specific. If you want your lessons to run smoothly and be less stressful, you want to be specific during planning. Be specific about every part of your lesson. For learning objectives, instead of saying the students will learn about the topic of sports, it would be better if you said, after the lesson, the student will be able to A. Identify and match the vocabulary for 10 of the common sports. Be able to pronounce the names of the 10 sports. Describe their favorite sports and why they like it. This will give you a much clearer picture of what you want your students to be able to do. It will also help you assess whether your students really got it at the end of the lesson. And that in turn saves you time when you create homework assignments, quizzes, and exams at the end of the year, because you know really clearly what you want your students to learn and know how to test them. Being specific is also helpful when you plan your lesson activities. For example, instead of just writing charades 10 minutes, you can include a detailed rundown. First, introduce activity and objective. You can say, we're going to play a game now and see which team is the fastest in identifying the sport. Then you can give instructions so that your students are clear about what you expect of them and the procedures for starting the game. For example, you might say, I will show a student the name of a sport and they will act it out with no words. Raise your hand if you know the answer, but don't shout it out. I will choose someone to answer. If the activity is complicated, you might also want to demonstrate this activity with a bright student. Then you go on with your procedures. Divide class into 2 teams. Put Team A and Team B on the board for score calculation. Ask a volunteer to come out to begin. You might also include a note for yourself. Choose a different person on the team to answer each time, not just the fastest student. This is an example of what you want to mentally think through as you're lesson planning. Depending on your own teaching style, you may or may not need to write all of this down, but you definitely need to be thinking through it. Experienced teachers might just go into class with a simple lesson outline to remind themselves of what to do. But this comes after tons of time practicing and experience in the classroom with teacher scripts and knowing how to organize procedures. The better you plan, the better your class will run. Hack number 4. Repetition and revision is your friend. A lot of teachers rush through class covering new topics. Maybe it's because we feel like that way we're giving our students more information so they're learning more. But actually that's not true. Students need a lot of repeated exposure to the same information from different angles through different activities to really learn and understand something. That's why kindergarten students learn the same songs over and over again. When students first start singing, they might not really understand what they're doing, but as they keep going and repeating, they will understand. Besides repeating, always remember to revise what you've taught. You know the idiom to jog someone's memory? Actually, when we ask someone a question, they're using their brain muscles to actively try to remember, and that helps the memory go deeper so that you really remember what you learned. So in class, we have quizzes, homework, and we also ask students what they learned in the lesson before to help jog those muscle memories so that they really remember what you taught them. Our last hack is here to help you be more confident when you enter the classroom. Hack number 5. Have a backup plan. You might have thought you've come up with a perfect lesson plan. You've leveled your students, you've come up with learning objectives, you've come up with lesson activities, you reviewed your topics. But class doesn't always happen the way we want. That's why we have backup activities. Activities that you just know work for your students based on your past experience and you're confident about doing and pulling out of your back pocket. Maybe one of the activities you planned went too fast, or maybe it wasn't the right level, or students got bored or didn't understand what you were trying to tell them to do. This is when you change right away. Pull out a backup activity and let your students do that instead. Be willing to plan really hard, but also willing to throw anything out the window at the last minute if it doesn't fit your students. I love having a list of backup activities that I know will work. This way, it calms my nerves, and if I'm ever called to substitute a class, I'm ready and not freaking out the last moment. Hope these tips help make your lesson planning journey more effective and less stressful. I've also included a link below to a free lesson plan template that you can use to jumpstart your journey. As my education professor used to tell our class, just take one baby step at a time and you'll reach your destination. You can do it. If you have any good tips you want to share with our learning community, feel free to comment below. See you in the next video. Bye!